Hi, it's Tony Murray and welcome to Monkey Graphics. In this video, or in a series of videos, I'm going to be taking you through a number of different tools and a number of different processes for creating kind of professional looking graphics. Now, graphics by their very nature are quite difficult to put together and usually best left to the experts, but of course that does cost money, and not everybody, especially if you're starting out in internet marketing, you don't have an unlimited budget, and the more things you can do yourself, then the better off, and maybe the quicker you can get off the ground. So with this series of videos, I'm going to show you how to create some professional looking graphics. You're going to need almost zero skill to be able to do it, and as I say, there's some tools that we're going to use that'll do most of the work for us. One of those is quite sophisticated, but it's not going to be a tutorial on how to use the tools specifically. We're going to look at just a couple of specific tasks that enable us to put some really good graphics together. So the first tool we're going to look at is something called GIMP. And this is a download page. This is a free tool, an odd name, I know, but it's a GNU image manipulation program, and GNU means it's under a kind of free use license. So nothing to pay here, so this is great. So from the download page here, we can see that it actually says download GIMP. In this case, it's 2.6.11. That may have changed, obviously, as we go on later. Installer for Windows XP, Service Pack 2 or later. So to install GIMP, assuming you're on a Windows PC. If, however, you have a Mac, there is a version available for Mac. So just go down here to show other downloads, and somewhere down here, download GIMP 2.6. Okay, this is GIMP for Mac OS X. But for this demo, I'm going to download the GIMP for Windows. So just click on that link, and in this case, it takes you to SourceForge. So GIMP installer for Windows, and here we go. So as you see, it's a .exe file. So you need to save that file to your PC. So depending on what operating system or browser you've got, depends on quite how that saves that off. But basically save that to your downloads folder. And then from there, you can run the exe and it will auto install the program for you. Okay, I won't go through that. It's very straightforward, very simple. Okay, and with GIMP installed, you should be able to see a little icon in your programs menu, probably also on the desktop. So I'm just going to run GIMP and see the startup screen. Sometimes it takes a few seconds to load. And this is kind of the default view that you'll first get when you load up. And you'll just see the actual program itself as an open window, and you'll have something here which you can move about called the toolbar. I won't go into this specifically at the moment, but this is kind of where we start off. Now we're using GIMP because that enables us to easily put together our designs, and we've got other tools that we can then do to develop those further. But as I say, for our initial designs and our messing about and trying to put things together, we're going to use GIMP. Now what we're going to use is something called layering. It sounds complicated, but it certainly isn't. As you'll see in a moment, it's very simple. It just means that every time we put a bit of graphic in or a bit of graphical image into our main graphic, then we basically put them in layers. In other words, they're one picture on top of another that we can move independently and move around. It just makes it very, very easy to manipulate things and to play with things and to tweak things, no matter at what stage of where we are with it. And you understand this more as we kind of go through. I'm just trying to explain it at the moment. Now, there is various different kinds of graphics, and the three that are important to remember at the moment are .png, or sometimes known as .ping, .jpg, sometimes known as .jpeg, and .psd. Now, the PSD files are these what I call layered files, and they're actually a specific file format for Photoshop. Now, Photoshop's similar to GIMP, but an expensive professional version, or paid for version, I should say. GIMP being a free tool, that's why we're using this one. But GIMP does use and accept the PSD files. Now, the PSD files are great because they can be saved off and keep all the layers within the graphic separate. And that means that you can save it off and bring it back and play with it anytime you like. And you'll see why this is an advantage in a little while. Now, the other two that we mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, the .ping and the .jpeg. .ping is a useful format because it supports what they call transparencies. In other words, part of your image, usually the background, can actually be invisible. So that means you can put your image onto your website, and where the background is, your website will show through. So you'll just see the image rather than a big square block. So that's quite useful, but they tend to be larger. And to be able to compress things into smaller formats, make them nice and fast for loading, we convert them to what we call a JPEG or JPG or JPEG. It will sometimes be seen as format. That means that compresses the graphic, keeps it in good visual state, but compresses it so it's physically smaller and loads faster on a website. So those are three types that we'll work with. And as I said, as we go through, we'll kind of have a look at those, and you will understand more as I go through and describe each one in turn and what we're doing with them. So for this demonstration, I'm going to show you how I put together the actual monkey graphics that you saw in the sales page. And for that, I'm going to need a couple of things to start off with. First of all, I'm going to need some kind of background image, which I'm going to go and find. And I also need a specific image. In this case, I've picked the monkey image, so we're going to find one of those. So let's start off with just getting the basics together, ready to start building our main graphic. Now, the first graphic I'm going to create is actually the header. So it'll be if it was a WordPress blog, it would be the actual header bar at the top, or in this case, it's a sales page. So it's a header graphic at the top of there. And I know that I'm going to put this on the Warrior Forum, so I know that I need a size of approximately 750 pixels wide. So obviously, you would choose the size that's required. Let's go and see how I would find a nice background image. Now, later on in the training, and there will be a complete list of a variety of resources and places you can go to actually get images that you can use for yourself and for commercial purposes. Now, you need to be careful, obviously, with copyright on images. So I'm going to go through and use Google search or Google image search to actually find some images and work with. But as I said, you can't just go onto Google image and grab anything you want. You do need to be aware of copyright. And the best way to do that is to actually take your images from websites, etc., that allow you to take those images and specifically say you can, or you can even buy images from a number of different stock image sites. As I say, for this case, just going to use a simple search on Google Images. And to find a background, I'm going to type in, you may have already guessed it, background. So if I do that, I'll get a number of backgrounds will come up. As you saw when I typed that in, there's a various numbers in the options here. I've got background images, designs, pictures, wallpapers, etc. So of course there's various different backgrounds. If you're looking for a specific color, for instance, if I was looking for a green one, I would type in background green, and I'll see a number of green backgrounds. And similarly, if I was looking for a blue background and search for that, I would find blue backgrounds. So, there's a huge range of backgrounds out there. Now, we're going to do something slightly different here because we're just going to create a header graphic. We're not going to use the whole background, but we are just going to pull a piece from these backgrounds to create our background header. I'm just going to look under backgrounds for a minute. And I'm looking for one. I've already decided, you would have seen the graphics, but I would have decided on a nice green background, so I'm looking for something suitable for my monkey graphics background. And I can't seem to find the one I'm looking for, so I'm just going to try backgrounds. You see now backgrounds of PowerPoint, desktop, Twitter, a whole new set of searches. So I said you really is a kind of unlimited background images you can pull up here, but I'm just looking for a specific one in this particular case. Okay, and I found the image that I'm after, which is this one. But just before we go and look at that, let me just look at some other ones just to show you what I look for in a way of a background. I tend to look for something that's got a bit of gradient in it, or some movement or something on the background. It's going to be relatively plain because remember you're going to put text over the top and you don't want it to be too confusing when people are trying to read the text. That needs to show up clearly. Now look at this one for instance. This was really quite a nice blue background. So I'll just open this one up a second. And as you can see, if I cut a piece out of here of a header shape, then that will give me a nice multi-hued background with a few little lines through it. So that will give me a nice background. And this is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. It's something that's just got a little bit of interest within the background. Now this one grabbed me for the monkey one specifically, so I'm just going to go and open this one up a moment. Now you can download these images, or another way you can do that, once they've opened up to the full size, you can right click and copy the image and then going back to GIMP, you can simply go to File, Create from Clipboard, and you've got the whole image on there. Now in this particular case, I think it's 700 wide, this one, so it's not quite wide enough for what I wanted. Sometimes these are thousands of pixels wide and you can cut a piece out the middle. In this particular case, I'm just going to cut a piece off the bottom of here because it's nice and clean with a little bit on the edge. To do that, I simply go to this I go to the toolbox, back in here, and at the top there's a little rectangle selection tool, which is the very first one. It's just a little square there. And with that, you can literally cut a piece out of here. Now if you look along the left hand side, you can see there's a kind of a ruler on the left hand side, and you can see where your cursor is pointing, and similarly along the top side, so you can always figure out exactly how much you're cutting out here. So in this particular case, I'm going to just cut the bottom off, and I want something around 170 pixels deep, and I want it 750 wide, but I've only got 700, but we'll fix that in a moment. So at the moment I'm going to take a whole width of this, which is to say the whole 700. So I'll just start down the bottom corner here, and now I'm going to look from the bottom of the image, which is that point there, which is right on the 400, 170, so I'm going to go 100, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and as long as I keep that on that marker and move that off the end, it will put a rectangle for me. And from there, I can edit and copy that rectangle, and then I can again file and create from clipboard, and now I've got a completely separate piece that is just for my background. Now it's not quite the right size for me, as I said. It needs to be 750 wide, or I want it 750 wide in this particular case. So I can simply go to Image, I can scale the image, and here I can change the width and height. Now they're linked together, so if I change the height or the width, it will change both to keep it in proportion, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to break those links, and then I'll just change the width. So just change it from 700 to 750. Scale the image, and sure enough, now I have a nice 750 by approximately 169, that's okay, pixels for my background image. I've just got one concern here. The background image appears to be a little dark. I personally like to see a bit brighter, a bit lighter. So that's no problem. We can go to colors, and in here we can change a number of things. We can colorize, which would change the color completely. We can change the hue and saturation. We can change the brightness and contrast and the color balance. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the brightness contrast, and we're just going to play with this a little bit. So if I just brighten this whole thing up. Okay, let's contrast it a bit. Take the contrast higher. Yep, that's looking good. So it's okay, that one. I'm thinking that's not too bad. I'm quite happy with that now. It's quite bright over there. Still slightly a little bit dark on that side, but I think that'll be pretty good. Okay, so I think I'll wind up this video now. In the next video, I'll show you how we get some monkey graphics and some more stuff to go on top of our new image.